Hey, everybody. Welcome into the 11th episode of 100 Essential Jazz Standards. Today, we got one of my personal favorite jazz standards on Green Dolphin Street. So, the story of this particular piece of music is as old as time in jazz. It was originally written for a movie called Green Dolphin Street. And like so many jazz standards, that is sort of the source material. It's movie music or music from a show that kind of was co opted by jazz musicians. Maybe they rewrote the changes a little bit and became a part of the jazz standard repertoire, the Great American Songbook, now not only as part of a show or a movie, but as part of the jazz tradition as well. Now, this tune can be played in a couple of different keys. Originally, it was written in the key of concert C, and a lot of people will play it in the key of concert C, but more people play it in the key of concert E flat. So that is the key that I'm going to present it to you today. But this is one of those tunes that it would probably be really helpful for you to know in both keys, both in C and E flat, because you never know when you're going to have to play it in one or the other. So there are some great recordings of this that everybody should check out if they want to play it. Some of the classic jazz recordings of this song. The first one is a 1947 recording by Jimmy Dorsey. And this was actually the original soundtrack for the movie, so it's always good to go and check out those source materials. Then, of course, in 1956, Ahmad Jamal recorded it. Absolutely awesome recording. Definitely check that out. And then the way that I and many of my friends and many other people I've talked to discovered this tune was by the Miles Davis Sextet. Their recording from 1958. And then, of course, it's been recorded by dozens and hundreds of other artists, so there's not going to be any shortage of recordings on this. Okay, so you know what we do here. We are going to analyze the chord changes so that you have a good idea of what's going on harmonically. And then, of course, as always, I've prepared an etude for you. Now, here's a note. What we are going to do is we're going to start putting these materials on Patreon. And if you guys don't know, I run a podcast called the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, and people support that show in the form of a small monthly donation on Patreon. And I'm going to start putting these up for those patrons because I think that's the best way to release them one by one before I get through another 10. And then, of course, once we get to 20, I'll put out another volume of 10 standards that you could just buy. So you could either wait or you could choose to support the podcast, which will also get you this stuff right away. Now, if you've never checked out the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson, that really small monthly donation gets you like a mountain of jazz materials on every subject that you could ever think of. There's almost 400 episodes of material over there. So if you're looking for some new stuff to study, some new materials, that's a great thing to check out anyway. I'll leave a link to all of that in the description below the video so you can go and check out how much it costs and what you get. And hopefully, if you haven't discovered the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson before, that can be a new thing that you listen to. We put out episodes every single Friday. Okay, without further ado, let's dive into the analysis. Okay, everybody, so let's take a look at the chord changes to On Green Dolphin Street. So this is a 32-bar form. It is A, B, A, C, and we're going to dive into all the sections. It's not that complicated, although it is kind of unique, and we'll talk about the uniqueness of this actual chord progression as we go through it. So let's dive into the A section, which I happen to think is the most interesting part and really what makes this tune what it is. Okay, so what we see is we start on the 1 chord, and then we do this really, really interesting thing with major 7th chords, but we keep all these major 7th chords over the 1 in the bass. So it's what we would call a pedal in the bass on the 1. And then we have all this interesting chord movement over the top of it. Let's actually check out what it sounds like first, and then we'll talk about the pattern that's actually going on. So we have a 1 chord. And then we move to this G flat major 7, but over the 1 in the bass. Then we move down to F major. Then to E major 7, and then we're back on E flat. Okay, so what's happening? Well, you might have picked up on this already, but we're moving down by half steps. So we go from the E flat chord up to the G flat, and then once we get to the G flat, we move down by half steps. G flat to F major 7 to E major 7 to E flat, okay? Now, this G flat major 7th chord might seem funny to you, like why use a flat 3 chord? Well, really, if you think about it, if I play this, which is just a G flat major 7 chord over an E flat in the bass, what does it remind you of? Well, it should remind you of E flat minor 7 with the 9. So that's all it really is. That's kind of the sound that you are getting. But I actually really like to think about it as a G flat major 7th chord because then it maintains this half step motion. And what you'll notice is that the F major 7 and the E major 7 introduce a lot of tension into the sound. Because when we're playing F major 7 over E flat, we get that E natural in there. We also get that A natural. Those are really interesting notes over an E flat. And then when we move down to E major 7, again, we have that E that's clashing, right? And we've got a B natural. So it's a really interesting sound. So that's all it is. It's just major 7th chords moving down by half steps until we get back to our original chord. Let's hear what it sounds like again. Really, really beautiful. Love playing over that. Love the sound of it. One of my favorite parts of any jazz standard. Okay, let's look at the B section. B section is very, very simple. So we do a 2-5 to E flat in the home key. And then we simply go up and we do a 2-5 in the key of G flat. And then 2-5 brings us back to our second A. Okay? So let's hear that. Okay, cool. All right, so there's our A section and our B section. Then we come back to our A section, we do exactly the same thing. And then the C section is the most complicated part. It's where the majority of the chord movement happens. Okay, so we start on just a plain old 2 chord in the key of E flat. And then we see the bass go down a whole step, but we keep that 2 chord over the top. Then we see the bass move down a half step and we switch to a 7 chord. Then we go to a dominant 3 chord, and that is mislabeled in the PDF. I will fix that. That should be an uppercase 3. I'll fix that. Okay, so then we see a dominant 3 chord, which then goes to minor 6. Now we see this bass movement again. We go from the minor 6 chord, the bass moves down a whole step, right? And then we see the bass move down a half step again. And this is a weird chord. It's a 2 of 3, then 5 of 3, and then we hit the 3. So it's just a 2-5 of the 3, a 2-5 to the 3. And then we simply have a 3, 6, 2, 5, 1, and then a 2-5 back into the top again. Okay, so let's actually check out what that entire thing sounds like, because do you notice it's the bass movement that is really, really interesting? And we kind of have this bass movement where we start, we go down a whole step, down a half step, and then we do that again. Here we have this, down a whole step, down a half step. And it really works when you hear it all together. So let's check it all out at a slow tempo. So. really, really nice sound. So that's it. That's the whole tune. You notice that it really doesn't change keys almost ever. Just this one part, it changes keys. The rest of it, you could think about it in the key of concert E flat. Okay, let's go on to the etude. Okay, everybody, hopefully you enjoyed that episode and you have a better idea of how On Green Dolphin Street works. And you can go out and play it at your gig tonight or get together with some friends or call it at the jam session. Let me know if you have any questions and we will see you with another video soon. Bye, everyone.